I think what David Stearns has been historically comfortable doing is finding the guy at the margin who he thinks could overperform. The Matons, the Staniks, the Brazobans like last year. Uh, I think that the Mets are good enough to win a championship this year. And I don't think he can take a half measure here. John, we've got somebody who's going to be right in the middle of the trade deadline, buy, sell, neither, both, and maybe go big here. And that's Derek Falvey, the head of baseball operations for the Minnesota Twins.
Yes, very well timed interview, I do believe. Falvey is terrific. We've had him a couple times before. Great answering, great responses. And yeah, they have some big players. Buxton cleared up that he's not going anywhere, but they have great relievers, Duran and Jax, and they have some other excellent players. And we're going to talk about all of them when we talk to him in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll certainly ask him all about the trade deadline and where his team stands and the key players. John and I are going to talk a lot about the Mets and Yankees and where they stand during the second half. We'll have some controversial hit or error at the end. Really, stick with us on it. I think it will be a little explosive, and we'll have a lot more on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, we're at that obvious point where we could take a deep breath and think a little bit about what has happened in the first half, where we're going in the second half. You're a lot busier than me right now. We're doing this. You're in Atlanta covering the All-Star game. I'm sitting here in New York, still getting ready for the second half, and we've really drilled down all year on what is now currently two second place teams in New York, the Mets and Yankees. They're certainly within hailing distance of first place in their division. But you want to know the bad news? They're not that far out of falling completely out of the wild card. The Yankees are 3.5 up on a wild card. The Mets are 3 up on a wild card, even though they're both the wild card leader. So why don't we start with the Mets? The good news is Manaea came back, Senga came back, and that feels a little more whole. And yet that bullpen, there's just a lot of issues there. They probably need to figure out center field, maybe to get another bat. I wonder, state of the Mets. What do you think about them as we're about to start a second half here?
Yeah, I mean, I know they lost that final series to Kansas City, but I thought overall it was positive. As you said, Senga Manaea back and looking very, very good. Manaea had 7 strikeouts in a brief appearance. So I think that is huge. That's what they needed to get for the second half, to get their two best or at least most talented pitchers back. Best is probably fair as well. Although David Peterson is here at the All-Star game, he's pretty good as well, obviously. I think they're in pretty good shape. I mean, you can live in center field. I think probably Taylor's been great defensively, has not hit that well. McNeil has done pretty well out there when they put him out there. He's obviously not a center fielder, but give him credit for being able to do it, to fill in there. It'd be nice, certainly, if they could get a center fielder. It'd be nice if Byron Buxton had said, I'd love to go to the Mets rather than I'm a Twin for life. But I think the Mets are in pretty good shape. It's the bullpen, right? And I think Stearns has been good about acquiring the bullpen pieces and arms in the past. And obviously Diaz is here. He's been fantastic. That's the main thing. But they need to fill in around him with all the injuries. And frankly, a lot of them have been, I think, exhausted from overuse. That is one issue with the Mets, that a lot of their starters throw 5 to 6 innings, somewhere in that range, not usually over. Peterson has, but the other guys generally have not. So, I mean, the bullpen is the issue, but to me, that's fixable.
Yeah, well, so I think there's two things there, John. I'm with you. If a playoff series began today, Senga and Manaea would pitch games 1 and 2, and Peterson would probably pitch 3. So getting those two guys back is huge. And of course, if they could add somebody else who would pitch in a first 4 playoff games, I don't think they'd ignore that right now. Though I think internally they think Frankie Montas is really much better than I think probably you and I think. Frankie, I shouldn't speak for you, but they
No,
think
you're
they
right.
they
You
think
can,
they
you can,
they think he's a playoff starter. We'll see over the long haul if that's actually true or not. For the bullpen, John, I just keep coming back to this thing, which is I think what David Stearns has been historically comfortable doing is finding the guy at the margin who he thinks could overperform. The Matons, the Staniks, the Brazobans like last year. Uh, I think that the Mets are good enough to win a championship this year. And I don't think he can take a half measure here. I think he's got to use real prospects to go. if Duran or Jax, for example, we're going to be talking later in the show with Derek Falvey, who runs baseball operations for the Twins. If Duran or Griffin Jax gets into the market, I think the Mets have to be very bold and try to get that kind of relief pitcher, not only because of this year, but Edwin Diaz can opt out after this season, and now it's Cone money, so ultimately they could probably keep Diaz. I think you mentioned something. Why not just add a tack on a year now at like I think that was you, right? Didn't I read
Right.
that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, tack on a year now and see if you could get that done and keep him. That might be a good idea. But just in case he's out, like help yourself this year and protect yourself for next year because you could win this year. And I don't think it's a half measure year for them. And they've built up the farm system enough to me to not have a half measure year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been one of the questions about David Stearns. Obviously, he came from the small market team. He's been in New York. He is a New Yorker. I'm not sure that affects him. He does not like to give up the prospects, but not all these prospects are going to turn into Juan Soto or Pete Alonso or Lindor or Diaz, right? I mean, some of them are not going to be stars, and you've got to be able to pick out which ones you can give up to get something good. And the Mets are clearly a now team. They spent a ton of money, not as much as the Dodgers, but a ton. I'm with you. They need to go for it. Duran from the Twins would be fantastic. There are going to be other relievers potentially out there. Maybe Bednar from the Pirates, pretty good. I know he was demoted briefly at the beginning of the year, but he's doing better now. Clase potentially, maybe. Kate Smith from the Guardians. There will be good relievers who are out there who you can get. I know you're going to have to overpay. It's not going to look great. Some of the Mets prospects are doing great right now, right? Jed Williams is doing great. Ton's doing great. McLean's doing great. I mean, those are probably the three guys they most want to hold on to now and don't want to give them up. And I get it. But, this is a now team, and, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, you can't take them all with you. The Seattle Mariners should remember that too. They have a lot of prospects, and what they're really good at is missing the playoffs. The Yankees are generally good at making the playoffs. They're certainly in position to do it. But man, they have given off bad vibes to me for about 5 weeks now. One of the worst vibes they gave off is like they're behind the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox are a game behind them, partially because in the last 5 weeks, the Yankees gone 1-9 against those two teams. Like they've caused their own problems by not playing well. They're an untuned piano to me. They always have 44 keys working at 44. Hey, when you hear Boone say our pitching was really good during the 6 game losing streak, and then it's our hitting was really good during the other 6 game losing streak. Right. Can you put it together? They have a left side of the infield problem that is huge. They have no third baseman. And Anthony Volpe, regardless of the defense of like the child who's actually holding the cookie outside the cookie jar, and the parents are still defending him, is a problem right now for the Yankees. His game has regressed.
Yeah.
And I watched him make a couple of bad plays, and then Boone talked about everyone who was on every other part of the play. Goldschmidt not reacting quick enough, Jazz not stretching. Well, how about start with the guy who had the ball in his hand in both situations, right? And so to me, I think they have a left side of the infield issue that where they have to get at least a third baseman. I think they need at least two relievers. And I kind of think they need a starting pitcher because, like, you're hoping and praying that Hill and Yarborough come back well and that Will Warren can make a full year and nothing happens to Rodon and Fried and something's already happened to Fried with this
Yeah.
blister. John, I think Brian Cashman has a lot to do in the next, like, 16, 17 days.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm out here in Atlanta and I'm hearing the Yankees. It feels like the Yankees are going to do something big, and I think that probably would be a good idea. Now, obviously, the Schmidt injury, not predictable. He was pitching great, and that is an enormous blow to them to have lose their number three starter like that. Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. You mentioned Aaron Boone and what he says. Yeah, I mean, he's brilliant at euphemisms. He can make anything sound good and not sound like he's making it up completely. There's some shred of truth to what he says. But yeah, I mean, third base right now, you've got two guys hitting exactly 149. That doesn't make a good rotation of third baseman. Volpe is a concern, as you mentioned. I know the fans are screaming. I feel like it's maybe a little bit overdone by the fans, a little bit. I don't know. But yes, he does feel like he's not doing as well on both sides of the ball now than he did the last couple of years. Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions with the Yankees right now, and there's no question about that. And I know they're right on the cusp of that 301 million, I believe, threshold, or maybe it's up a little bit right now, but anyway, around $300 million threshold, and they got to break through it. I mean, if they're going to do something, because they got a lot of questions right now. Bullpen hasn't been great. We could talk about the fundamentals as well. A lot of issues. One thing I would say, I don't know when you hang your hat on this, but they do go through these stretches where they lose six in a row. It seems like every year, and every year they end up making the playoffs at least.
Yeah, look, and I think that Brian Cashman and his front office know how to make July trades. They do it usually when the team is contending. So I assume, what you're hearing will be accurate, that they're trying at the minimum to do big things and they'll do some things. And I think that's plural between now and the trade deadline. One of the key teams, John, in that decision-making process is going to be the Minnesota Twins. They're right. They're among the most important teams on the borderline because they have talent that a lot of teams are interested in. Their president of baseball operations is Derek Falvey. He'll talk about all of it next on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John and I are so happy to be joined this week by Derek Falvey, who is in his ninth season running baseball operations for the Minnesota Twins. As we speak, his team is second in the AL Central. It's far behind the Tigers, 11 and a half games, but only four back in the wild card. Derek, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Always good to see you.
Derek, it's the obvious place to start, right? We've now cleared the draft. It's 2 weeks and a few days to the deadline. And you are so clearly one of the pivot teams here. Which way do you go? What do you do? Are you buyer, seller, a little of both, neither? Can you give us the state of the Twins with a little over 2 weeks until the deadline?
Yeah, Joel, it's been an up and down year for us. We started off slow. We were pitching well. We weren't swinging the bats the way we wanted to. Then we rattled off that 13 games somewhere in the middle. It felt like we were really on a good run, and then we stumbled a bit again, mostly on the mound that time, which was hard for us to kind of wrap our heads around. We were throwing the ball really well for a while, and then we had some injuries and some guys go down. Pablo Lopez, Zebby Matthews, a few others that strained our group some. But our guys really stepped up over the last couple of weeks. We came back home after a tougher road trip and have won our last three series. So, you just chip away. As you said, Joel, the reality to this is that when you look at the league, certainly with the advent of the third wild card, there's a lot of teams that are within striking distance in both leagues of that spot. So Tigers have played really well of late, for sure all year. Our job is to kind of come out of this break here, kick things off in Colorado, get on a good run. And then my expectation is, as has been the case the last couple of years, everything will really come together really close to the deadline.
Yeah, I know you want to compete and not sell, but being that you're around 500, kind of in the middle of things, are you getting calls now from other teams? And I'm here in Atlanta, the lovely Courtyard Marriott, and Byron Buxton professed his love for the Twins, undying, and that he will not. He's a Twin for life, he said. So he wouldn't even accept the Braves, his hometown team. You getting calls, and if you get one on Buxton, do you still listen, even though he's got the no trade?
Yeah, we get calls on everybody, which speaks to, I think, hopefully the talent we have across the roster. Buck's no different, right? Because of just how good and how talented he is. So fun to watch him play in that home run derby and then ultimately be home in Atlanta and get a chance to do that. I'm not surprised he's asked that question. I think all 29 other clubs in baseball would love to have Byron Buxton on their roster. I can tell you that we love having Byron Buxton on this roster. So the rumors are the rumors, the noise we can't control. But I feel like our focus now is continuing on focusing on how we can control the next few weeks, put ourselves in a good position at the deadline. Byron's a Twin. He mentioned that. He always has been. That's what we love about him. He's a leader in our clubhouse. It's who he is. And we feel like with the group that we have, with guys coming back a little healthier here, playing well, if we get on a good run here, we still believe this is a team that can compete in the fall.
So you mentioned it right there. You think it's a team that could compete in the fall. I wonder how delicate and fluid this is for the next 10 days to 2 weeks. You'd mentioned you won your last three series, two of them against pretty good clubs, the Cubs and the Rays. But your reality is 92 games into the season, you're four under. And it's probably like, if we're being realistic, you have to be 10 over at least to get a shot to even be the third wild card, 84, 85, 86, 87. Like, what do you weigh as far as today? Are we good enough to get in and do something versus, man, I know I'm going to get calls on Joe Ryan. I know I'm going to get calls on Duran. I know I'm going to get calls on Jackson, be able to make good trades, or Castro, or, three other relievers I can name right here. Take us through the balancing act of what you have to do for today and tomorrow as the guy who runs baseball operations for the Twins.
Yeah, it's a great question, Joel, because it's really about the prep work that you do leading in, right? The decisions have to be made at a moment in time. You'll know from another GM or another team as we're talking through things. Okay, this is the moment in time we've got to make a decision. No one's been at that point yet. There's been very few, obviously, trades of that fit a trade deadline, reality so far, and it's because every team's evaluating this. Our player personnel group and pro scouting group, that group works tirelessly all year to try and set ourselves up so that if we are forced with a decision one way or the other, we're prepared for it, right? So whether it's a buy side decision where we're adding something to this roster, we're prepared for what those players might be. We've checked in with other GMs, we've checked in with other teams around availability. What we tend to hear often this time of year is give us another week, give us another week and a half before we know for sure. There's very few clear buyers and clear sellers, and a lot of teams right in the middle. Then on the other side, if we're on the sell side and we don't play as well going into it, we have to listen to those because as a small to mid market team, across baseball, that the lifeblood sometimes is turning over your roster as you go so that you can make sure that you have talent in the pipeline coming back and through. I remember just a few short years ago, 2018, it was a tough year. We had been to the playoffs in 17, 18. We were middling at the deadline, had to make some tough calls. When we traded Eduardo Escobar away, it was hard. He was with us for a long time, right? He was a big part of our team. But to get a package that ultimately had Joan Duran coming back, that was huge for us down the line. It didn't happen as cleanly as you think in the moment, but ultimately you've got an eye on the future. We're going to have to be prepared for all those paths, given where we are right now. A couple games under 500, 4 games back right now of a playoff spot. But a good week of baseball, a good week and a half can put you right back into this thing with the way it's shaken out so far.
Let's talk specifically about Joe Ryan. I understand Byron Buxton is a Twin for life. You made a great trade to get Ryan. He's an analytics darling. He's been great. I know I threw out some imagined, far-fetched probably trades where I speculated, well, maybe the Mets could give him Jet Williams and Sproat or something like that. And I got backlash from both sides, which is a better sign than usual when I just get backlash from the Mets or the Yankees side. Do you listen on, you've got some big stars on that team. Do you listen on Joe Ryan if somebody calls?
The way we talk about it all the time, and this is just fair, and I tell our players this all the time, our job is to listen to everything. The goal is to make the Minnesota Twins better, right? And ultimately, whether that means short term, long term, depends on where you are sometimes at the deadline. So it's never about how we feel about them. We love every player we have in the clubhouse. We love every guy we've added, whether it's the guys we added just this year or guys we've had for a long time. But rumors we can't control and conversations we have to have. Many times, those conversations about some of the players you're talking about, even if you don't agree that that's the player you're going to trade, it may spill off into a subsequent conversation that could really help you in a different way. So I think we need to stay open to creativity, think about all the players that are on our roster, and then try and make the best decisions we can going into the deadline to try and put ourselves in the best spot, whether it's for this year, but certainly for this year and beyond.
Derek, I hope I'm not kind of like beating it into the ground because I used the term before. I do believe you're one of the pivot teams, not just because you're in the middle, but because you have desirable pieces at this time of year. You have a lot of relievers. Every team is looking for them. You have an ace number one, number two kind of starter in Ryan if you want to do that. You may have some other stuff, including Buxton if you were willing to go. Is there any point you feel like you have to look around the room and say, guys, like everyone is in our situation, which is that nobody can make a decision. Why don't we make a decision and set ourselves up as great as possible for the next 5 years by taking these 5 guys and seeing if we could turn it into these 12 to 15 pieces that really set us up? Because can we look in the mirror and say we're a championship team as constructed today? I hope that made sense as a question.
It absolutely does, Joel. And I think we have those conversations, in our group. I mean, to tell you to pull back the curtain, those conversations happen in our room. What can we do? How good are we? What if we get to October and we're playing the way we know we're capable of? What is that team? And I think for us, the way we look at it, and maybe we're biased, I'll admit we always are toward our own players, but with a healthy Pablo Lopez, who's coming back here, hopefully in the second half, with Joe Ryan, as you just mentioned, Bailey Ober, who's gone through some ups and downs this year, but what he's been, and then young pitchers like Zebby Matthews and David Festa, Chris Paddock, others that have depth for us, and the bullpen pieces you mentioned, we all know that come October, you got to start with the pitching. And if you feel like you have that pitching, which we've had by and large for the front end of the year, we feel like we can make noise in October. But we have to take stock of reality as we get close to the end of July. And I think the core to your question, Joel, is whether or not you can make that decision right now. And even if you did, it takes two partners on these things. And I think that what I've come to learn from talking to so many other clubs is that everyone's waiting to make some of those buy-sell decisions. So yeah, you might be able to go to one team that clearly likes some of your players, but if you don't know the landscape of the market, it's hard for you to know if you're getting a return that's consistent with what you think you could get as you get closer to the deadline. So there's some benefit, in waiting for a couple of different reasons, not just to evaluate your own team, but ultimately to determine whether or not the right buyers are in place.
Well, I guess I'm doing the specific player questions today. Carlos Correa, you signed him up twice. He also loves it in Minnesota. We can see your background. It is beautiful there in the summer. Do you get calls on him? I know he has a big salary. He hasn't had the year that he normally has. You get calls on him, and you said you listen on everybody. I mean, obviously, Buxton says he's a twin for life, but is everybody else, all the other 25 players on the roster you listen on?
Well, I think the way that typically goes, John, even with guys with whether it's no trade clauses or otherwise, and again, players we love having here, there's a team that might call and just say, would he have interest in playing here? They don't even know necessarily if a player would have interest, right? So you always have that conversation, open dialogue. I think in Carlos's case, when we signed him, obviously he's been a big part of our clubhouse from a leadership standpoint, the way he goes about it every day. Back in 23, when we won in the postseason, he had some of the best plays I've seen in a postseason series to lock down games and really tight games. So I think we know his pedigree. We know what he brings from a resume standpoint in terms of how many playoff games he's had and won. And so that gives our clubhouse a lot of comfort because they know they can lean into him from a leadership perspective. The focus is on him being here. He hasn't had quite the offensive season that he wants to have. He continues to do the things defensively that never slump for him. So I think that he's starting to come around a little more offensively, found his swing, fought it a little bit earlier this season. But the thing about him is he shows up every day. He's accountable. He's a great leader for our group, and he'll continue to push because we know that when he's there in big moments, he finds a way to come through.
Derek, I wonder if I could just like piggyback on it and just ask the bigger question there. Like, so Correa has three at 91.5 million left after this season. Buxton's at three at 45 after this season, which is a good deal for him. But you have kind of built your positional group around Correa, Buxton, Lewis. And it has been whack-a-mole, right? Like you can't get them all healthy at the same time. I think Correa even had a little ankle thing just before the break here. Again, do you have to break it up at some point and say, if insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, are we doing insanity here by thinking we could keep these three guys healthy who are obviously talented players, right? I mean, two of them are overall number one picks. The other is Byron Buxton, who's in his prime as a great player. So we know how good they are. Do you have to break it up?
Yeah, it's fair to say, Joel, and we wrestle with that. Certainly when we look at our club, we want to win in the postseason. We talked about earlier. And in order to win in the postseason, you need those premium talented players to go perform, right? There's no way about it. I mean, that is what you need in those games. And we feel like each of those players in particular, we know it with Byron right now, we're getting to watch it all year long. But certainly with Carlos, we've seen it before, and we've seen it with Royce. I mean, we would not have won in the postseason in 2023 without Royce Lewis. So, yes, there's some downside to it, and there's been some struggle in terms of keeping all three of them on the field at once. But I can tell you that when we do, and we know when they come together, yeah, there's a risk to it, but we lean into those guys. So I feel like this is a group that, is very talented, and ultimately, if they put the right baseball together over a longer stretch period of time in the late part of the season, we can be in a good spot. But we need to keep them healthy first and foremost, and that'll be our focus.
Seems like, I don't want to say solved because you never know, but Buxton is having a career year, and you see what he can do when he is healthy, deserving all-star. I mean, he's a fantastic all-around player, offense, defensively. How about Lewis? When he has played, he's been very clutch, particularly with the bases loaded, very talented, was a number one pick overall. Is there anything we can do or you can do? I don't have anything to do with it. Anything you can do to keep him healthy and on the field?
If you're willing to help too, John, I'll take any help we can get because we want him on the field, I
I,
assure you.
I'm sure.
Everything you just said is spot on. He's been so clutch in big spots. He's been big for us at different times. He's also young and he's gone through some real struggles. I mean, certainly coming through the minor leagues, his track record was not traditional, right? He had the ACL surgeries, he had some ups and downs. This kid's always put a smile on his face and keeps working at it. And I think that even this year, he comes most of the way through spring training. He's looking great. Everything's in a great spot. He deals with a hamstring strain that puts him down for a period of time. I think the harder part is when you come back from that. And even though he may be healthy at that moment in time, that's a month and a half to 2 months worth of at bats that he didn't get. And this pitching at the big league level now is as good as it's ever been. And it's hard to get your timing, make sure that you're on pitches. And for him, we've seen that each time he's come back, maybe it takes a little while for him to get going again. We've seen just before the break him really start to swing the bat well. So I think it's really about making sure that he stays on the field because I remember just a couple short years ago having this exact same conversation on Byron, where there were streaky stretches of him offensively. It wasn't quite the same player every day. We knew he could play defense, and there were still some flashes. But you see what happens when Byron has a fully healthy offseason, a fully normal spring training, and then gets into a routine through the year. We need that for all of our guys, and Royce will benefit from that at some point here in the future. I know that.
I'm wondering we mentioned at the top of the show, you even used the term, the Tigers are 11 and a half up on you, right? Like, so the division, I mean, we've seen kind of miracle comebacks, but we could assume like the division con. I also just wonder, they're viewed as having one of the better farm systems in the sport. And that maybe this is, especially if they get signed Scooble long term, maybe this is the beginning of them having some control in your division. Do you look at that as part of the decision? Do you believe that? And do you look at that as part of decision making? Hey, if Detroit's going to control this for a while, should we kind of build it up again to take a stronger run at them?
Yeah, it's again another fair question that we assess. We look at the quality of the division, we look at where we are within it. I mean, even going back a year, Detroit really got on that run in the second half, but four teams, above 500 in the AL Central last year, three of them making the playoffs. We fell just short. And when you look at that group, we felt like all of them are talented, right? We've kind of gone back and forth with Cleveland over the years for a few years there with the division. Detroit obviously on a tremendous run this year and at the top and have earned every bit of where they are right now. And we believe Kansas City, going through some ups and downs, much like us in Cleveland this year, is a really talented team led by Bobby Witt, who, is a game-changing player, right? So, and we know the White Sox, as they build and continue to get better, clearly in a more of a rebuild mode, but are getting better every year. So, yeah, it's always hard. There's never going to be a perfect moment in time where you look at any division and you say, oh, we have the runway and we're the only team. I think we have to look at it as we're trying to compete sustainably year over year, and you got to put yourself in a position to give yourself a chance to win. You never know when a team has setbacks or some injuries or things don't go the right way in front of you, and you get to run past. So we believe in that sustainable model with the advent of the wild cards and the opportunity to get in different ways. You feel like you want to build a team that can compete every year.
A name that I hear out there, and I am at the All-Star game, and I talked to a couple executives and agents, and the scuttlebutt is that Duran, people are asking about him. Could you tell me about exactly, how many teams are calling on him, and what's your appetite there? Because he is one of the most talented relief pitchers in the game, and there will be, obviously, as there are every year, an incredible feeding frenzy in terms of the need for great relievers.
Yeah, no doubt. That's probably an area at the deadline every year where you get the most calls. For us, it's the back end bullpen guys that can really perform because, as we said earlier, in a playoff series, when you can shorten the game and you have the off days and you might need not to go as deep every game with a lot of your starters, having those elite bullpen guys can really change a series, especially in a short series. So we look at it as we're going to get a lot of calls on Johan and a number of other guys in our bullpen. The difference for us too, and maybe this is unique to our situation, is when we look at our club, many of these guys are controlled beyond this season for multiple years, and so there's never one crack at those conversations for other clubs. Sometimes you're setting the groundwork for off-season conversations where you can find matches too. But I fully anticipate that guys like Johan Duran are going to get calls at the deadline because they do on all clubs, and we feel like he's obviously one of the best relievers in the game.
Derek, I've asked a bunch of people out there. So your team has been up for sale, somewhat publicly, without any resolution yet. And some say it puts you in a bind. Can you trade players? Like, or do you need to keep certain group like a Buxton or a Correa? Hey, they're famous names. That's part of the thing. Others tell me people who are buying teams are sophisticated. They understand that you could clear the deck and then go get more good players. What does being up for sale mean for potentially, no pun intended, this short-term sale potentially of players before July 31st at 6 p.m.?
Yeah, so I ask that question of ownership all the time. My first time going through this, certainly through a sale process or an exploration. But the Pohlad family's owned this team for many, many years, one of the longest tenured ownership groups in all of Major League Baseball. The best part about working with them is they've always told me that, continue to do your job the way you think is best, right? At all turns. So I'm trying to navigate that. Certainly, if there's a significant decision like that, I would always involve ownership. All 30 clubs do that. But ultimately, it makes for a unique reality in the conversations because some people ask how that's your question there, Joel, is exactly what I get asked from other GMs from time to time. Does that have an impact? What does that mean? It certainly does have some part of the conversation and maybe more broad conversations with ownership about what any decision we make means. But to this point, all I've asked for is just clarity from them around how to operate, and they want me to continue to push this team to where we believe we can be this year, and then have some of those conversations as we lead into the deadline when some of those difficult decisions have to be made.
Just to follow up on that slightly, I think you answered it, but some executives suggested they're under the assumption, maybe it's just an assumption or not a real strong belief that there is a money component to this, that potentially a team for sale. Maybe they're just thinking that. I don't know if you've said anything to them along these lines, but the assumption is out there that the money will be an issue for the Twins, that saving money might be something that you would look to do. So a little bit of a follow-up there.
Yeah, it's a fair follow-up, John. And I haven't been given that direction from ownership around those conversations to this point. I would say this, though, that every team that when they're in the sell side of things, if that ultimately is part of the conversation, they're always thinking about how they retool that for the future, right? And so if that means financially things pivot in a different direction, it's all part of the conversation every year. Hopefully, we're not in a position where we are talking about that. But if we are, that will become a much broader conversation about how any of these trades, as you mentioned, for guys with multiple years of control, how it impacts not just this year, but subsequent years in investment at that time.
Derek, as a way to wrap it up, I have two quick ones that you mentioned Pablo Lopez. I would assume he's a key guy for a decision making. Like he's such a good pitcher. When does he come back? He's had a strained shoulder. Can you tell us when you anticipate him returning? And are teams calling you about him, even though he's hurt, because he's such a good pitcher with a good contract for the next 2 years? I think two at about 42 million.
Yeah, Pablo's tremendous. I mean, not only is he one of the best human beings in terms of his leadership, the way he goes about it, how he is as a teammate. I could sing his praises for years, but I would say that the way he goes about his preparation and how ready he is on the mound, and quite frankly, we leaned on him back in 23 in the postseason and was a big part of it for us. So Pablo is coming back. He had a teres major strain, which is kind of that muscle between shoulder and lat muscle, and he's tracking really well. Had an MRI recently. It's in progress and right where we expect it to be. He won't be back before the deadline, but we hope sometime soon after as he kind of builds up his throwing this month. So that's good news. In terms of ask on him, I fully anticipate that'll come toward the end of the month. I think when players aren't playing and they're injured, there's maybe more of the question you just asked, Joel, which is what's the timeline? What does it look like for the future? But everyone believes that in this case he has a strain that will resolve itself and put him in a good place for the second half of the season, and hopefully it's for us charging down the stretch.
And so then the last question is like if you decide to sell, you could have two very distinct sells, right? You could just say, hey, we got a bunch of walk-year guys. That's traditionally what you do. Bader, Colum, Castro, I'm trying to look here, Paddock, maybe that kind of group of guys, and you get some return for them.
Mhm.
Or do you say, nah, if we're going to do it, let's jump in the water. And again, that would be about the Ryan and your eighth and ninth inning relievers, probably, and or a good position player. How do you make the decision? Where are you on it?
Yeah, those are the tough calls, right? Always, because as you get closer, in my experience the last few years, it feels like when you get to the last kind of handful of days before the deadline, is when you get a real sense of how serious teams are in terms of the pursuit of guys beyond rentals, right? I think my experience has been if you're on the sell side, those last 5, 6 days, you're really getting what are sincere asks around players and seemingly fits around, let's call it rentals. And then if a team's really interested in a more significant trade, that's when you really have to dig in because those things can't happen in the last 24 hours. They have to happen in the days leading in where you can spend your time, dig in deep, have conversations with ownership on both sides because the buy side needs to think about how that impacts not just 2026 and 27, potentially beyond that. So we feel like we'll have those conversations. It'll be a busy few weeks, but I feel really good about the group we have, and if we have to have some of those conversations, we'll have them at that time.
Derek, this is a fluid time of year and a busy time of year. The end of the draft and the beginning really of the sprint to July 31st. So we know you're busy. We know it's a general off day in baseball, but John and I appreciate you joining us on the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. Always enjoy the conversation with y'all and have a great All-Star break.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Derek.
Derek.
John and I, of course, thank Derek Falvey for joining us on the show. John, we always play hit or error at the end of this show. I always let you go first. I'm going to go first because I've seen you in various forums. I know we disagree. So I will say it's a hit that Jacob Misiorowski is at the All-Star game. And that everyone should stop whining. I know, like, oh, there are so many fans sitting there going, if just Tyler Rogers could show up at the All-Star game, I will turn it on, right? Or I'm going to feel bad for Christopher Sanchez or whatever. I am John, you know me, we know each other like close to 40 years, right? Like a long time. I'm a meritocracy guy.
Right.
But this is a event to get eyeballs on this. This is to build up the value of the thing. This guy's got a great nickname. He's had an explosive opening. Like if it was just 5 starts by Fidrich or just 5 starts by Skeens, I not only think Misiorowski should be at this game, he should be starting it, and Aaron Judge should be leading off so that people turn on. You're trying to create stars out of it. It's the All-Star game. Tyler Rogers not a star. So other guys will get to the All-Star. Like there's too many All-Stars already. To me, try to make a star of the Miz. A star like Milwaukee so well. Can you imagine making a star in Milwaukee at a high level? What that would mean for that franchise? What it would mean for the sport? So we're going to exclude a singular pitcher. By the way, how many pitchers bowed out? We already have added pitcher after pitcher, and none of them were for Rogers. None of them were for Sanchez. None of them were for Suarez. To me, make a star if you could make a star. Start him, have him face Aaron Judge to open up the game. Let's have that moment at 8, whatever, Eastern time to have the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if it were all about the fan interest or eyeballs, Ohtani should be starting the game. Misiorowski, I don't blame him at all. He's been great in his 5 starts. I get it. I understand at least partly why he was chosen because of the fan reaction and interest. I get that. What I didn't like is that guys who are actually deserving are not here. And I think that's more about, certainly not about Misiorowski. Nobody's blaming him or anything. And I appreciate it that he accepted. He should have accepted. I think that's more about all the constraints, all the rules that they have to have 14 pitchers. It's a 9-inning game, and we're not going past 9 innings. Why do you need 14 pitchers? Why do you need 2 players at each position? Who cares? Why do you need an extra guy from Atlanta? Like they have 3 first basemen to get Olsen on the team. Michael Busch is having by far a better season than him. I want to see, and I know you believe in meritocracy. I do as well in this case. And it felt like certainly Christopher Sanchez, Juan Soto, Seiya Suzuki. I mean, even though they have, 1,000 people here, players here at the All-Star game picked or whatever, they didn't find room for, a half dozen guys who were so deserving that I didn't love that. Trey Turner, another guy. So that was my issue with it. I've got really not a big issue with Misiorowski. If you need that 14th pitcher for the 9-inning game, go for it.
Yeah, John, the way I look at it is I agree. Like, why have 14 pitchers? But there were 14 pitchers, and Suarez, Sanchez, and Rogers didn't get on with the 14, and with about 5 or 6 or 7 guys opting out. right? Like Misiorowski got in because it opt out. And by the way, Misiorowski's in because he's willing to throw on Tuesday. We have all these delicate flowers who don't want to throw an inning on Tuesday.
Well, some of that's the team telling them we
I
don't want.
get it.
I
I
get
get
it.
it. But we want to promote the game, and then we have a home run derby that doesn't have Ohtani and Judge and Strawberry and
Well,
all
thank
that
you for bringing
stuff.
that up because that's going to be my error right
Go
there.
ahead, you go, John. I'm
I don't
sorry
want to
that I
call them
jumped our
delicate
format.
flowers, but not that Ohtani is listening to this. And it's great that he's here. It's great that he did the interview. I mean, Barry Bonds, when he was an All-Star, which was every year, didn't do the interview sessions. Ohtani, despite the fact that everybody's tearing at him, did the interview session. So I'm not really ripping him. I kind of get it, but I mean the home run derby and Cal Raleigh is terrific. He should be a household name. Somehow he should be built up bigger than he is. He's a great personality. Having almost 40 home runs at the All-Star break, I think one fewer than Bonds, who I mentioned earlier, fantastic. It's great that he won, but you mentioned it. Ohtani, Judge, Alonso, and Soto should be in the home run derby. Right? The home run derby. And I give Jazz Chisholm all the credit in the world for doing it. He was willing to play third base for 2 years when he's great at second, just giving it a shot at third. He's willing, he's able to a degree to play third. I give him credit. I give him credit for giving the home run derby a try. But I mean, shouldn't the home run derby be reserved for the absolute sluggers of the game? And somehow they need to convince these guys that they should be the home run derby, because I do think that people would watch if it was Ohtani, Judge, Soto, Alonso, and the absolute top sluggers of the game in the home run derby.
Yeah, John, amen. I'm a big NBA fan. The dunk contest is created for Julius Erving and then ultimately Michael Jordan. And now I get four guys I've never heard of in the dunk contest.
But they are spectacular dunks.
They are spectacular dunks. And look, somebody
Right.
O'Neal Cruz hit what, a 500-foot homer yesterday.
Right.
Spectacular homers. But we want the guys, we want that. Can you imagine if the final got down to Ohtani versus Judge? What that number would be on TV, like everyone in a bar focusing in on it, if that's on the television, everyone getting on social media, oh, it's going to be Ohtani Judge, turn on the TV. Like we want to promote the game, and then the people who can promote it best don't do something for an hour on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, what do you think it is? Is it
I think it's
afraid
fear
to
of
be embarrassed, or it's the fact that they're gonna, get into a bad habit for the second? I mean, we know that Cano and Piazza, two of the best hitters of the last 25 years, got a goose egg, a zero in the home run derbies when they did it. Cano did win one year, but is that it? They don't want to be embarrassed? That's what you think?
I don't know. Like maybe more concern of injury. To your point, the teams, the Yankees would faint if Judge was in this. They'd worry about his oblique. I'm sure they would.
Hey, Judge did the WBC. They didn't approve that. I'm sure they prefer him not to do the WBC, and good for Judge for doing that. I mean, that's terrific.
Do you think anyone cheered louder that Chisholm bombed out in the first round than the Yankees? So to make sure that he didn't get to the second round and take more swings? This is the problem. It's NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? Everybody wants better facilities, mental health facilities or whatever. Oh, not on my block. We all want a home run derby, but you can't use my guy. We want better WBC, but you can't use my pitcher. I
don't remember one guy being injured in the home. Has anyone ever been injured? I know a guy who was injured falling off the back of a truck, opening a car door, slipping on something in his house. I don't remember one guy being injured in the home run derby. So,
John, you have I think we disagree on Misiorowski, but amen on our best players have to and our teams have to buy in to promote the game at the highest level when we have a chance to do it, to make guys household names. Somebody who should be a household name, Tommy Hogan, our producer, who's so great every week. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please rate and review us. The New York Post YouTube sports page, give us a view. And please, we got the second half coming up. Please continue to stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.